welcome to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. I am Juliet the daughter.
That must make me Kevin the dad.
And this week, we are covering, I guess you could call it Led Zeppelin 4? Yeah, Led Zeppelin 4. So, Dad, what do we need to know about the band?
Well, we need to know that this is going to be a Cliff Notes version of the band because there's just so much ground to cover. But there's a lot of biographies out there. The one I've read is Hammer of the Gods by Stephen Davis.
Oh,
so
cool.
good. I read it twice. It's unauthorized, and the surviving band members hated it, but it's still a good read because the guy's main source was a disgruntled ex-employee of the band named Richard Cole. And he saw a lot, and he told a lot, so...
Sang like a canary, huh?
Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's 1966, and session musician James Patrick Page, born September, or maybe January 9th, 1944.
Huh?
I've got September and January for some reason. I don't know. It's one or the other. Joined the Yardbirds to replace bassist Paul Samuel Smith. Then Page switched to lead guitar, creating a dual lead guitar lineup with Jeff Beck. Beck would leave in October 66, making the Yardbirds a four-piece. Jimmy Page on lead guitar, Chris J. on bass, Jim McCarty on drums, and Keith Relf on lead vocals, harmonica, and rhythm guitar.
Mm-hmm.
In 1967, they recorded what would be their final album, Little Games, and toured the United States. The band was wiped out from the tour. McCarty and Relf wanted to go in a more folk music direction and form the folk rock duo Together, which they formed together. Anyway, Page wanted to keep going with the heavy blues sound of the Yardbirds and wanted to form a supergroup. It would be Page and Jeff Beck on guitars, Keith Moon and John Entwistle from The Who on drums and bass, and maybe Steve Winwood or Steve Marriott on vocals.
That would have been cool.
The group never formed, but Page, Beck, Moon, and session musician John Paul Jones, born John Baldwin, January 3rd, 1946, did play on Beck's Bolero from the Truth album.
Yep.
The Yardbirds played their final gig in Bedfordshire, but still had several concerts in Scandinavia to play.
Oh.
Jim McCarty and Keith Relf gave Jimmy Page the okay to use the Yardbirds name to fulfill the obligation. Page's first choice for singer was Terry Reid, who declined the offer but suggested one Robert Plant, born August 20th, 1948, a singer for the group Band of Joy. Plant accepted and recommended former Band of Joy member John Bonham, born May 31st, 1958, as the drummer. Page wanted Chris Dreja to remain as bassist, but Dreja left to become a photographer. Fun fact, he photographed Led Zeppelin for the back cover of their debut album.
Oh, cool.
Meanwhile, John Paul Jones's wife suggested to her husband to ask Jimmy Page about the bass vacancy. Page signed him up because they had done session work together over the years and Page was a fan. When the four met to practice, Jones said as soon as he heard John Bonham play, he knew they'd be great. They called themselves the New Yardbirds. And recorded an album in 9 days, mostly at Page's expense.
The lifting starts already.
Right after the album was completed, Chris Dreja sent a cease and desist letter stating the band could only use the Yardbirds' name for the Scandinavian dates. As to how they got their new name, legend is Keith Moon and John Entwistle said that the supergroup with them and Page and Beck would have gone over like a lead balloon. Manager Peter Grant suggested dropping the A from lead so people wouldn't pronounce it lead.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Balloon was replaced by Zeppelin, which to Page suggested a combination of heavy and light. Combustibility, hello Hindenburg, and grace. Peter Grant got the band a $143,000 advance from Atlantic Records, which is $1.253 million in today's money.
To split amongst themselves, I assume? Okay.
It was considered the biggest deal of its kind at the time. Now, at the recommendation of Dusty Springfield,
No way!
who was a friend of John Paul Jones and on Atlantic at the time, the label signed the band without ever seeing them.
Wow, thanks, Dusty.
The band had autonomy over their career with Atlantic, which was also unheard of at the time. Now, just a sidetrack about manager Peter Grant, he knew the music business inside out, and he was also over 6 feet tall and 300 pounds and not to be messed with. But he did more talking than, actually being physical, but he wasn't imposing presence.
They'll make them an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah, basically he made sure Zeppelin got paid and never got ripped off.
Oh, that's good.
He trusted the band to take care of the music, and he would take care of everything else. And he was never at a loss for words, except for once when he saw Bob Dylan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Peter Grant went up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Peter Grant. I manage Led Zeppelin." Bob took one look at him and said, "Hey, do I come to you with my problems?"
Whoa, Bob. That's iconic, actually. That's an iconic response, but geez, I could see why he'd be like, well, shit, nice to meet you, too.
The band toured the U.S. for the first time at the end of 1968 into February 1969. Led Zeppelin, the album, was released January 1969 and went to number 10 on the Billboard 200 Albums chart. Critics gave it poor reviews. Rolling Stone said that the Jeff Beck Group did this stuff better. And if you listen to their album Truth, there's some, wait for it, truth to that. Check out our Jeff Beck podcast for more on that.
Yes.
During the first year as a band, they completed 4 U.S. and 4 U.K. tours.
Whoa.
Led Zeppelin 2 was recorded mostly on the road and came out in October of 1969. It hit number 1 in the United States. Again, critics were critical, though now it's looked on as one of the greatest, most influential albums ever.
That's Mike's favorite Led Zeppelin album.
An edited version of Whole Lotta Love was released as a single and went to number 4 on Billboard's Top 40 chart. It would be their highest charting single. They only had 5 other songs reach the top 40 as the band hated singles being released. They felt their albums were indivisible. Peter Grant was pro-album and pro-concert. The band didn't do any TV appearances. If you wanted to go see them, you had to go see them live.
Okay.
Led Zeppelin 3 came out in October 1970, and this was more folk and acoustic than the first 2 albums. Critics, some who said that their albums were becoming as imaginative as their album titles,
Oh, jeez.
and fans really didn't know what to make of it, but it did hit number 1 in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
And then the 70s,
Trabless?
the decade that Led Zeppelin owned.
Oh, okay. Yay.
The concerts were sometimes 4 hours long. Light shows were incorporated. They got their own private jetliner, a Boeing 720 nicknamed the Starship. Hotels were trashed. John Bonham allegedly rode a motorcycle through a rented floor of the Continental Hyatt House in Los Angeles.
I believe it.
And the thing was, he hated touring. He just wanted to be home with his family, so it was like anything for a distraction,
Oh.
especially drinking binges, just to forget the road life.
Which we'll get to that later.
Yeah, and the debauchery, and the occult stuff, and Jimmy Page. You kind of have a lot to answer for.
Why? What'd he do?
There's just so many stories. Underage chicks,
Ugh.
Satanism, potentially, allegedly.
Okay.
Just a little bit of everything for everyone.
What does it say
But-
about me that I find the underage chicks worse than the Satanism?
But
Yeah?
it's also been suggested that a lot of stories of road life were exaggerated, and the band wasn't constantly engaged in acts of naughtiness.
Well, as Jack Black said, even if you guys did sell your souls to the devil while you're rotting in hell, we'll be enjoying your music for years to come.
Now, Led Zeppelin 4, or Untitled, or Zoso, or the one with Stairway, came out in November of 1971, but we'll get to that one a little later. The band hit the road again and toured the world from late 1971 through early 1973. Now, my personal favorite Zepp album, Houses of the Holy, came out in March of 73. And again, it was another album that hit number 1 in the US and UK. The band hit the road for a North American tour that year and broke attendance records. 3 sold-out shows at Madison Square Garden were filmed for a movie that came out in 1976. The song remains the same.
Awesome.
And let me tell you,
What?
Mike Shavs, I'll never forget this. He said he was so looking forward to that movie, and he walked out of the theater just so disappointed.
Why? What'd he say?
He just was not impressed.
Oh.
A soundtrack was also released in 1976, which was also kind of meh. Anyway, the band took a break from touring in 1974 and launched their own label, Swan Song, which was a success while Zeppelin lasted, but folded in 1983, 3 years after they disbanded. The double album Physical Graffiti came out in February of 1975, and again it went to number 1 in the US and UK. Zepp was set to tour in the fall of 1975, but in August, Robert Plant and his wife Maureen were in a car accident in Rhodes, Greece.
Oh, shit.
Robert broke an ankle whilst Maureen was badly injured, needing a blood transfusion to save her life.
Holy shit.
During this forced hiatus, the band recorded much of their next album, Presence, which came out in March of 1976. they hit the road again for what would turn out to be the last time in 1977.
Uh-oh.
When they arrived in New Orleans, Robert Plant received word that his 5-year-old son, Carrick, had died of a stomach virus.
Holy shit!
The rest of the tour was canceled. Now, in November of 1978, the band recorded at Pole Studios in Sweden, which, ABBA's studio.
Okay.
In Through the Outdoor was released in August of 1979. It got mixed reviews, but of course it went to #1. A North American tour was planned for the end of 1980. Now, on September 24th, 1980, on the way to rehearsals, John Bonham asked assistant Rex King to stop for breakfast. Bonham downed 4 quadruple vodka screwdrivers and drank more during rehearsals. The band rehearsed late into the evening and then went to Jimmy Page's house in Windsor. Bonham fell asleep. He was put to bed and placed on his side.
Roll him over! Roll him over!
John Paul Jones and tour manager Benji Lefevre found Bonham unresponsive the next afternoon. He died, and he was only 32 years old. The inquest a month later found that Bonham had consumed 40 shots of 40% alcohol by volume vodka and vomited and choked.
Turn him over. This is the lesson you learned as rock and roll fans. Turn them over.
The tour was canceled, and the remaining members issued a press statement saying, quote, "We could not continue as we were," unquote.
At least they were smart about that, unlike some bands.
Who? Anyway, a final studio album, Coda, made up of outtakes and unused tracks, came out in November of 1982. As for post-breakup, the 3 remaining members did reunite for Live Aid in 1985 with Phil Collins and Tony Thompson from Chic on drums. They weren't happy with their performance.
Aww.
They reunited again in 1988, this time with John Bonham's son Jason on drums for Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary concert. Again, the members were disappointed with their performance. In 1984, Page and Plant, along with Jeff Beck, put out the Honey Drippers Volume 1, a 5-song EP. Then the 90s. A 4-disc box set was overseen by Jimmy Page that came out the same year, 1990. A second box came out in September 1993. A 10-disc set,
Oh my God!
the complete studio recordings, also came out in 1993 because they did 9 albums, one of them being a double album, so you get your 10 CDs. Now, that's the box I had, which I got from Circuit City.
Oh, rest in peace.
Yep. In 1994, Page and Plant reunited for an MTV Unplugged concert they called Unleaded. John Paul Jones was not invited.
Oh.
Now, in 1995, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and John Paul got a dig at Page and Plant, thanking them for finally remembering his phone number.
Oh, did they laugh or were they pissed?
They were PO'd.
Eey.
The BBC sessions came out in 1997. Then the 2000s. How the West Was Won, the live album we all waited for, sorry, song remains the same, came out in 2003 along with a Led Zeppelin DVD set. In 2007, the band reunited with Jason once again on drums to play at the Ahmet Erdogan tribute concert at the O2 in London. He had founded Atlantic Records.
Oh, okay.
Now, there was talk of a tour, but Robert Plant had other commitments first, and the other 3 would have to wait. They said they would, but guess what?
They didn't.
Right. They tried getting another vocalist.
Who are you going to get?
But, things fell apart and no reunion materialized. The 2010s. Jimmy Page remastered Zeppelin's catalog again, and in 2012, they got a Kennedy Center honor.
Well deserved.
And this year, 2025, the documentary Becoming Led Zeppelin came out February 7th.
Did you watch it?
Is it on Netflix?
I don't know. I gotta look up what streaming service it's
I'll
on.
have to see what do you call it, Pirate's Life in Me?
Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And, I'm the old fart kind who would probably wait for the DVD because I'm sure it's probably coming out.
I don't know if DVDs are coming out anymore.
Yeah, they kind of are for some things.
Yeah.
Anyway, Led Zeppelin is always looked on as a heavy metal band, but I think they were more than that. They were definitely hard rock, but they definitely... They did indulge in different styles.
They're also a gateway band for harder stuff if you think about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in John Bonham, they had a drummer who could swing and groove and get funky. And, how many metal bands have someone like that? Not a lot. Or probably maybe none. The influence cannot be overstated. So many bands have influenced by them. So
For better, for worse.
bands. Yes. And then on top of that, you got tribute bands like the all-female Led Zeppelin.
Which I think is cool.
It is. I've seen them twice so far, and they're coming back to Odeon. And I thought, well, twice is enough, but I'm kind of tempted for a third time. If you're interested, let me know.
When is it?
I think sometime in May. I'll have to get the date.
Maybe. It might be in France. I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, there's also a joke band, Led Zeppelin, which is a reggae band with an Elvis impersonator on lead vocals.
That sounds awful and amazing at the same time.
Uh-huh. And nowadays on YouTube, there are AI reimaginings of their albums done in 50s rock and roll style, big band style, basically any style.
And I'm sure Postmodern Jukebox has done some stuff with them too.
Oh, I think they have.
Yeah.
Now, as for me, I came late to the game for Led Zeppelin because I always heard their stuff on the radio, mostly Stairway to Heaven, but I never got really into them until like the late 80s, early 90s. So whilst for a lot of people my age at the time, they'd had enough of Led Zeppelin, this was like all brand new to me. So I did get those 2 box sets at first, but when the complete studio recordings came out, I had to get that because I am just like OCD, COD, CDO, whatever. You know, I'm a nut for chronology, so I ended up selling the other 2 box sets to Carolyn. She was happy. Now, as for the album we're about to review, the title, is it Led Zeppelin 4? Is it Untitled? Is it Zoso? Is it the one with Stairway?
I'm calling it Led Zeppelin 4 just for purposes of titling the video.
Okay, well, Jimmy Page decided the album would not have a title, only 4 symbols chosen by the band, and also the cover would not have a title printed on it or even the band's name. Atlantic objected, but the band stood their ground and would not turn over the master tapes until Atlantic said okay.
Now, who picked the symbols for themselves, and why did they pick the symbols they chose?
I'm glad you asked because Jimmy Page designed his own symbol known as Zoso. Page said it was never intended to be a word, but he's never disclosed the reason behind what it means.
Okay.
Now, Jones's symbol is called a triquetra, that he found in Rudolf Koch's Book of Signs. That's the one where it's got like those ovals with the points on them.
Yeah, and the circles, yep.
Bonham's is the 3 interlocking rings.
Yes.
Which, if you flip it upside down, that's also the logo for Ballantine Bear.
Okay.
Robert Plant designed his own, the circle with the feather inside it, but there's no reason as to why. Guest singer Sandy Denny got her own symbol, 3 equilateral triangles that serve as an asterisk on the inner sleeve.
Okay.
More about her later. As for the cover, the front is a picture of an old man carrying a bundle of sticks that Robert Plant found in an antique shop. It was hung on the wall of a partially demolished suburban house. The back is a block of flats known as the Salisbury Tower in Ladywood, Birmingham. Very British. The inside is a painting called The Hermit by Barrington Colby. It's based on the tarot card of the same name.
Ah, okay.
The only song that has the lyrics printed on the record sleeve is Stairway to Heaven, because they probably just knew that was going to be the song. Anyway, the album was released on November 8th, 1971, and has gone on to sell 30.4 million copies so far. Initial reviews were overwhelmingly positive, as are the retrospective reviews. Hindsight's always easy. And I think regardless of glowing reviews or trashed reviews, I think this album's pretty much critic-proof. It makes all sorts of best of lists. And author Chuck Eddy chose it as the #1 album for his informative and hilarious book, Stairway to Hell, the 500 Best Heavy Metal Albums in the Universe. But what does my daughter think of it, since this is the first Led Zeppelin album that she's ever listened to? Let's find out.
First track, Black Dog. I can't help it. When I heard those chords of Black Dog, all I could think of was Weird Al's parody Trapped in the Drive-Thru, where they turn on the radio and that song starts playing full blast before they click it off. If you could talk about maybe how he got the permission to use it, I'd be very interested in knowing how. I wonder how heavily they were inspired by blues and jazz before I found out just how heavily inspired they were, because those chords repeating over and over sound like a jam session, and the guitar solo towards the end sounds almost like a jazz improvisation. And also, this song is just plain down and dirty in the best way. It's about sex, also about being used for sex and then being down and out on your luck afterwards. It might also be the most accurate portrayal on this show because they make mention of stinging and burning, which you know that happens. The song had me all keyed up in the first portion of it, and then once I realized they were just jamming out on their instruments, I understood more of their vibe. This just might be their version of experimenting or having a jam session, which I don't mind, but I think you would have to see it live in order to appreciate the musicianship that's going on. Not to say that you can't appreciate it when you listen to it, but I think if I saw this performed live, it would have me more keyed up than just sitting down and listening to it. To quote Kids React, it's okay.
Okay. So Robert is obsessed with a woman. He's got a flaming heart. He can't get his fill. And the way she moves, he's going to make her sweat and going to make her groove. But then, betrayal. She spent his money, took his car, started telling her friends she's going to be a star. Which leads Robert to conclude that a big-legged woman ain't got no soul. Now, as for the title, there was a black lab the band would see wandering around the grounds of Headley Grange where they were recording. The dog would disappear at night and come back in the morning exhausted and do it all over again. And Robert thought, yeah, this dog's just on the prowl at night.
Yep.
Now, John Paul Jones got credit for the riff. He said it was inspired, I'm using my quote fingers here, by the riff in Howlin' Wolf's song Smokestack Lightning, which tell me I sent you that to listen to.
Yeah, and I heard that. I went, oh no.
Yeah, Zepp just sped it up. Now, Robert sings most of the verses a cappella, with the band responding each time he's done.
Like call and response, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jimmy Page said he got the idea from Fleetwood Mac's 1969 song, Oh Well, which I did send you, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And I re-listened to it and I thought, this sounds quite a bit like Black Dog. Anyway, great way to open this or just any album in general. You may not know the song title, but as soon as Robert Plant opens his mouth, you know you've heard the song before. Page solos at the 3.5 minute mark, and the band just gets really, really heavy, especially John Bonham. And I actually can't believe I wrote here, smash, bash, crash. And yes, the song does show up in Weird Al's Trapped in the Drive-Thru, and Al made sure they got a songwriting credit. And you know him.
Oh, yeah, he always asks.
He always asks. Like certain other bands, which we'll get into in a moment. Anyway, next.
Rock and roll. I like this song a lot better than the first track. It feels like Led Zeppelin is paying homage to the rock and roll of the 50s, especially with the honky-tonk piano that they have playing. It reminds me of that John Lennon quote, "Don't give me any of that rock and roll bullshit, give me Chuck Berry." Because as Robert Plant explains as he sings, when he goes back to the music he loves, he remembers what else is important in his life that brings him joy, including the woman he loves, and he's going to show her just how much. And I wonder if some rock and roll bands feel there's a double-edged sword with the music they make. On one hand, they're proud of the stuff they do, but what makes them really happy is playing the music of their idols, whom they'll never be able to touch, and on that most rare occasion, surpass. You know, killing your idols by eclipsing them and sort of rendering them yesterday's ham sandwich. See Elvis and the Beatles. Food for thought.
Ham sandwich.
And I love how at the end they let John Bonham go off for a couple of seconds because, well, he's John Bonham and he can. That makes me smile.
Robert sings how it's been a long time since he rock and rolled, as opposed to rock and rolled. Anyway, it's been a long time since he did the stroll. He wants to get back to that. So carry him back. Carry him back. Carry him back. Back to a more simpler, more innocent time, because he was 10 years old when the stroll came out in 1958. Now, rock and roll grew out of a jam session when the band was having a hard time trying to figure out how to finish Four Sticks. John Bonham started playing the drum intro to Little Richard's Keep a Knockin', and the rest of the band joins in.
Which again, when I heard that, I went, oh no.
Now, Rolling Stones pianist Ian Stewart was there, and he plays piano on the track.
Okay.
And this song rocks so hard. And yes, at the end, John Bonham just takes charge and gets that nice brief solo at the end. But for me, it's fabulous.
What?
Because Plant, Page, Jones, and Bonham get the songwriting credit. You know who doesn't get a songwriting credit?
Little Richard.
Little Richard, because rock and roll is keep a knockin' with different words. Now, people always point out it's just the drum intro, but for me, it's the whole song. And even in that Little Richard Best Of CD that I have, in the booklet at the very end, they point that out. Now, as great a band as Zeppelin is, the issue of songwriting credits just always comes up.
Yeah, we can't avoid it, Zepp fans. We got to talk about it.
I mean, for one example, bluesman Willie Dixon sued them for
Yep.
plagiarism in the band's use of his music for his songs Bring It On Home and lyrics from his You Need Love for Zepp's song Whole Lotta Love. And they ended up reaching a out-of-court settlement, and I sent you that
Yep.
video of 8 examples.
Yep, I watched the full thing.
But I'm sure if you really do a deep dive on YouTube, there's just so many more examples.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something like when we did our Jeff Beck episode,
Mm-hmm.
there were examples of like Beck's like, wait a minute, I did that first. Jimmy Page, why did you steal my stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Because Jimmy Page was backstage watching Jeff Beck, and hey, ideas.
Mm-hmm.
The French call it homage. In English, you call it ripoff. Anyway,
Plagiarism.
yeah. Next.
The Battle of Evermore. Now, at the time, this was my favorite song on the album so far. I didn't focus on lyrics because of how the music was arranged to sound like an old English minstrel folk song, and Robert Plant's voice duetting with the lady singer, especially when they vocalize, is heavenly. I sat back in my chair and just let it wash over me. It still rocked with just the voices and the strings, and I loved every minute of it. Okay, Dad, you can go into the context and the lyrics and the Lord of the Rings connection.
Yep, this is one of 3 Zeppelin songs that allude to Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings.
Not a Tolkien suit. No, I'm kidding.
I'm not sure if he was still alive when this came out.
Oh, touche. Okay.
The other 2 songs are Misty Mountain Hop, which we'll get to a little later, and Ramble On from Led Zeppelin 2. Now, fans say that this song is about the Battle of Pelennor Fields from the Two Towers. That's the one in which the forces of Gondor team up with Rohan to defend Minas Tirith from Sauron's forces.
Yep.
The Dark Lord and Ring Wraiths are mentioned, and the Queen of Light is assumed to be Galadriel.
Yep.
Anyhow, Jimmy Page had picked up John Paul Jones's mandolin, an instrument he had never played before.
Oh.
He made up chords, and Robert Plant came up with the lyrics. When it came time to record, Robert felt that he needed another voice to tell the story, so he invited Sandy Denny, and he knew her from when Zeppelin shared a bill with her band Fairport Convention. Robert would be the narrator, while Sandy Denny was the town crier.
Oh, okay.
This is an okay song. It really doesn't bother me.
Oh, I love it.
But it doesn't move me either. But the thing is, I've never skipped over it. I will always listen to it. So it's got that going for it.
Next track, the big one.
Stairway to Stephen.
Sure, Stairway to Heaven. I first listened to this song when I was a student at Rick, taking a course about music and medicine taught by Professor Samuel Breen. The course focused on the healing powers of music, how it affects our brain, and how our bodies respond to it. Think the Mozart for babies phenomenon, or how a certain song creates a lucid moment for an Alzheimer's patient. Now, Stairway to Heaven was sent to us by Professor Breen when we were studying medieval medicine, specifically melancholia. Melancholia was thought to be one of the 4 temperaments, the others being phlegmatic, sanguine, and choleric. Melancholia was a condition believed to be caused by an excess of black bile in a person's body. This created a depressed mood, bodily complaints, and sometimes hallucinations or delusions. Music and dance were often used for treatment, and the music was often written in a melancholic vein. Oh, and in the 16th and 17th centuries, if you had it, it meant you were a genius, and melancholic music and art emerged. Now, in the 20th century, it became a synonym for depression. Now, I didn't really understand the song at all when I first listened to it, and it's been years since I put it on. For me, what really pays off is when the rock section kicks in at around the 5-minute 30-second mark, like when Phil Collins starts playing the drums in the Air Tonight. Before that, it's an English folk ballad. Parts of it remind me of Mercutio's Queen Mab's speech in Romeo and Juliet. I think it's supposed to be about how we're all searching for something that we can't find in the material world, a connection with something greater than ourselves. We feel the need within us, but we just don't know how to satisfy it. We could try to get closer, though, by tuning into the natural world around us or looking within ourselves. At the end of the day, I still don't know what it's about. That's just my best guess, but it will fill you with yearning. As for me, though, I feel it the most with Hart's rendition at the Kennedy Center Honors. I think that version really does it for me because it's the one I enjoy the most hearing sung, and it's also like the song is finally fully fleshed out. They have a backing choir singing their horn out, they have heart out, they have a horn section, and not only is it a great tribute to the band, but it's Jason drumming for his dad, and they're all wearing the bowler hats, and it gets me every time he gets choked up before playing the cymbals at the end. It's just so full of love for the band and their music that there's no other way to put it. That cover rules, and I like it better than the original. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it.
That's fine with me.
All right.
We could do a whole podcast episode just on this one song.
Yeah, we could.
We could. Anyway, Jimmy Page came up with the music over a long period of time. Robert Plant came up with the words. It was recorded over a 3-month period from December 7, 1970 through February 1971. Jimmy Page plays 6 and 12-string acoustic and electric guitars, and in concert he had a double-neck guitar
Oh, okay, I've seen
to be
the
able
photo.
to do that.
Mm-hmm.
John Paul Jones plays bass, electric piano, mellotron, which is kind of a precursor to the synthesizer,
Mm-hmm.
and synth bass, which is kind of a keyboard bass.
Mm-hmm.
He also contributed recorders in the opening section. And guess who plays drums?
Who?
Well, John Bonham,
Yeah.
obviously. Anyway, it's almost kind of like we're getting 3 songs in one.
Kinda, yeah.
There's that quiet part
Mm-hmm.
until about 4:18, and then the drums kick in, but everything's still calm.
And then
And there's that story that I told you
Oh,
about
yeah.
that music critic who was at his junior high school dance, and he's slow dancing with this girl that he just loved or lusted after, and everything's going great, and he's wondering, why isn't this song ending? Why does it keep going on? Why isn't it ending? And then at the 5.5-minute mark, like you said, things start getting louder.
Mm-hmm.
And then almost at the 6-minute mark, Jimmy Page just starts soloing.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 6 minutes and 45 seconds, Robert Plant comes back in, and it's hard rock time.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the 7-minute 47-second part, everything stops except for Robert's voice.
Yep.
And he closes out the song a cappella, and things just calm down. Now, as for the lyrics, what do they mean? Robert Plant said it's about a woman who, quote, took everything without giving anything back, unquote. And that just works for me because I've analyzed it and analyzed it. And I just have no flipping clue.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, he just ends up lecturing this woman at the end about life in general, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Page knew that this was the standout track from the album,
Mm-hmm.
and FM stations just played it and played it and played it. And I think one of the reasons that they played it a lot was so the DJs could take bathroom breaks.
Nah, that's funny.
It's 8 minutes long. I'm like, yeah, I got time. I'll be right. Okay, coming up, greatest song ever. To the bathroom. Atlantic Records wanted the band to release it as a single, but they said no. You had to buy the album, which is what people did. Hence, 30.4 million copies later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing is, it took about 2 years, but Stairway eventually turned into an album which surprised Jimmy Page. Now, however, according to John Paul Jones, the first time Led Zeppelin played this song live in March of 1971, the audience was bored.
Oh,
They,
I could see why.
they were just waiting for something else, but eventually this would become the song to close out their shows. But by 1977, Robert Plant was getting tired of it. He said there were only so many times you could sing it and actually mean it.
Mm.
And then there was one time he contributed $10,000 to a listener-supported radio station in Portland, Oregon, KBOO. Yes, KBOO. The station said for a $10,000 donation, they would never play Stairway to Heaven again. And Robert Plant just happened to be driving on the Oregon coast,
Oh my god.
and he heard the offer. He pulled over to a payphone, called the station, and made the pledge. He had a company credit card.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
And he later said that Stairway, while it was very, very good for him, quote, but don't you know, I've heard it, unquote. And there's been a ton of covers. Yes, the most famous being Hearts at the Kennedy Center Honors back in 2004. And they
No, not 2004. 2012.
2012. Why did I get 2004?
I don't know.
Oh, you know why?
Why?
Because I was looking at a chart that said that they had put their version on their remaster of their album Little Queen, and it had a 2004 date, but
Oh,
I
okay.
guess that was incorrect. Anyway, thank you for correcting me.
You're welcome.
Now, the second most famous version, for those of you of a certain age, is a parody by Little Roger and the Goosebumps. Yes, Stairway to Gilligan's Island.
Which it really works.
It does. Now,
It shouldn't, but it does.
however,
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin's management was not amused,
What?
and they threatened legal action. So the band just, Little Roger just did not have the money, so they had to pull it. But for some reason, it came back in circulation in 2000. Now, Robert Plant has said this was always his favorite cover of Stairway to Heaven. And
Oh,
God love him for that. And that crack I made earlier about Hairway to Steven,
yeah,
that's actually the name of an album by a group called Butthole Surfers.
that's amazing.
It is. And the third cover I've heard, and you've heard it too, probably without knowing it, is a lounge version that was on an episode of Coupling. It's the episode
Oh.
where Patrick first meets Sally at a party at Susan and Jeff's office, and it's playing in the background. You
Oh.
have to listen closely, but it is there.
I just remember, well, is that the same episode where they make out to the Spider-Man theme?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I remember that more than the Led Zeppelin cover.
You have to listen really closely, but it's there.
Okay.
And yes, then there was the lawsuit involving the band Spirit and their instrumental Taurus. And the thing was, Led Zeppelin had opened up for Spirit on their first U.S. tour.
Yeah.
Long story short, Spirit lost their suit. You can check out YouTube for all the details. It got to the point where there's a courtroom illustration of Jimmy Page.
I've
It
seen
got
it.
to that point.
Yep.
It just goes into like all this detail, but just check it out on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And like the album, I think Stairway to Heaven is critic proof. It's considered the greatest song ever in the history of songs. So there. I like it. I mean, I'm not in love with it.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to take it to dinner and a movie before trying to make a move, but yeah, it's like, let's be friends, okay? In 2020,
Dad.
in, what?
Jesus, Dad.
Well, I mean, there are some people who think this is like the be-all and the end-all.
The Alpha and the Omega.
Well, it's like Jack Black saying, better than the Beatles, better than the Stones, better than Tenacious. Well, yeah, definitely better than Tenacious D.
Well, that was just him being funny.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, in 2023, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Recording Society Registry.
I'm fine with that.
Yep, I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Next, side 2.
Misty Mountain Hop. When I told Mike that we were covering Led Zeppelin on the podcast this week, his first question was immediately, "Oh, have you listened to Misty Mountain Hop?" I told him not yet, but I just wanted to listen to it for the podcast and not in the background on the car ride. So we ended up playing a song about a noose or a hangman that Led Zeppelin wrote instead.
Oh, Gallows Pole
Yes, that's it. We listened to that.
from Led Zeppelin 3.
Which he explained that the drumming was pretty cool because it was a country beat, but it was an inversion and I could hear it, and it was pretty neat. Anyway, the opening of Misty Mountain Hop reminded me of Savoy Truffle by George Harrison.
I can see that.
So maybe they stole it from George. I don't know. And
I don't think so.
No. And the dissonance that followed after that was fascinating because it's so in your face and jarring, but in a really good way. When he also sang the lyric about the policeman offering tea, I thought of a photo of Robert Plant that circulated Twitter a while back where he's signing an autograph for a policeman. And I was so disappointed. I'm like, that's not very punk rock of you. I mean, they're not punk rock, but you get what I mean. That's not very, screw the man of you.
Well, hey, maybe the policeman was faint. And also, when they asked us to stay for tea and have some fun, tea is also slang for marijuana.
I know.
Marijuana.
Yep, and I had to look up the lyrics of the song to appreciate the context of the meaning. I obviously knew that the title was a reference to J.R.R. Tolkien, but the rest of the song I couldn't figure out how it tied into Middle Earth, Middle Earth, that'd be funny. And then I saw the interpretation that he was at a pot rally and he was hoping for a better world. And a better world for him would be escaping into the world of Middle Earth from Tolkien's books, which is fine. But I think for a more Middle Earth song, I would listen to the Battle of Evermore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Robert Plant wrote this about a legalized pot rally that took place in Hyde Park, London in 1968. The police made arrests for marijuana possession. So Robert decides, like you said, he's packing his bags for the Misty Mountain, where the spirits go and fly, man, and there's always good times.
Mm-hmm.
Except if you're trying to destroy the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this is one of my favorite songs by them. Bonham just swings on the drums and gets a little funky too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a great groove. And John Paul Jones's electric piano riff that opens the song, that will stay with you for the rest of your life, whether you want it to or not.
Side note on John Bonham, I think the highest compliment he could have gotten was Stuart Copeland said his reaction to hearing John Bonham for the first time was, "Check this shit out, motherfucker!" Which I just wanted to sneak in there.
But there's also the story about, like, he always wanted to meet Buddy Rich, but Buddy Rich just had contempt for rock and roll. I mean, just like rock and roll was for drummers who couldn't play. That was his.
Jeez. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Buddy Rich was an asshole anyway, except when he was on the Muppets. Had to keep it clean for the Muppets.
And then he cussed out Animal after it was over.
Yeah,
I bet.
probably said he was playing clams or something. No, because Mike played me. There's a compilation on YouTube if you search for it of Buddy Rich yelling at other musicians.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm just like,
Yep.
Mike's laughing his ass off, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's an abusive dickbag.
Now, I've told you that story about what happened after Buddy Rich died.
No?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're taking a side note here, listeners, because this is too good to pass up.
Yeah.
So what happened was one of his former band members had called up Buddy's wife and said, may I please speak to Buddy? And his wife said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but Buddy's dead. He's like, oh, okay, and he hangs up. A couple of days later, same guy calls. He says, hi, may I please speak to Buddy? His wife said, I think I told you can't because he's dead. Guy says, oh, okay. A couple of days later go by. Guy calls again. And he says to the wife, may I please speak with Buddy? And his wife says, look, why do you keep calling? Stop calling. I've told you 3 times that Buddy's dead. And the guy says, I know. I just like hearing it.
Oh, God. Wow. So I guess you could call him like the Scrooge of drummers.
I guess.
Everybody's like, well, you going to go to his funeral? I will if lunch is provided. Anyway, back to Led Zeppelin.
4 Sticks is where we are.
Which is my favorite song on the whole album.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
I just love it. It just
Okay.
rules. Yeah, the final 3 songs are actually my 3 favorites, along with Evermore.
Okay.
Now, Dad, I need you to explain to me what's happening in this song with the percussion, because it sounds like a lot of variables at once, and I need to understand what's going on. I think my brain was just so fascinated by what it was hearing with those guitar chords and the percussion sounding like it was coming from every direction that sensorily I was very pleased. And Robert Plant's voice on top of it, singing about how it's time for his girl to cry because he's leaving, just added to the ambiance. This song tickled my brain in the best way, and I love it so much. Now, what's going on with the drums?
Huh. Okay, now, like Black Dog, this song's title has nothing to do with the lyrics. It's called 4 Sticks because John Bonham played this song using 4 sticks, 2 in each hand. Incredible.
Cool,
And
okay.
but they also had a really difficult time trying to record this thing. There's like the distortion going on, and it just really got to the band. And I don't think they ever played it live because John Bonham just kind of hated having to
Do it.
do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So yeah, Robert's got to get away from you, probably because of something you did. Anyway, this is the one song on this album that for me is kind of like,
Really?
it's there. For
Wow.
me, it kind of feels like it's just marking time.
Okay.
But the thing is, I've never skipped it. Maybe one day I'll think, oh yeah, this is the greatest song ever, even more so than Stairway to Heaven. But, you know, I've been listening to this song 35 years, and to me it's still, it's okay. I don't have a problem with it. Maybe I just need to listen to it more because you're getting something out of it I just haven't been hit with yet.
Oh, I love it. I think also listening to it on headphones helps.
Okay.
Next track, Going to California. I think the pace of this song is what I needed on a sleepy Saturday morning. Robert is going to California to start over fresh and find a beautiful girl with flowers in her hair. Very granola hippie beauty that comes to mind. But as he gets there, he finds that California has its own problems too, and that he might be trying to chase a girl who doesn't exist except in his mind. I think this song is melancholy too, but it sounds beautiful with just the guitar and Robert's voice. I didn't even think it was him at first on this track because he sounded so different singing in his lower register. The echoes at the end are a nice touch too, because it sounds like his internal yearning for something else. Again, melancholy but beautiful.
Yeah, and after 4 Sticks, it's quiet time. So part of the lyrics have to do with California earthquakes, which I think maybe the lines about the wrath of the gods getting punched on the nose might allude to that. Maybe they're up in the sky, and then, you know, ugh, I'm bleeding here, and it's just causing all this mess on Earth. Anyway, and it's also kind of about starting over. Like Robert says, he spent his days with a woman unkind, so he's off to California to make a new start. And I think the woman that they're referring to, it's got to be Joni Mitchell,
Okay.
because Robert and Jimmy Page were just huge Joni Mitchell fans. And plus, in the live version on How the West Was Won, Robert Plant does say her name, especially after the line about to find a queen without a king. She plays guitar and cries and sings. And that's also a reference to one of Joni Mitchell's songs on her debut album, and the song's called If I Had a King. And it's easily one of their prettiest songs, and it's kind of, I don't want to say un-Zeppelin-like, because it's definitely them, but it's kind of unexpected, I guess.
Okay, final track, When the Levee Breaks. Question, is the title supposed to be a spin on the lyric When the Bow Breaks in Rockabye Baby?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. So when those drums and guitar came in, my first thought was like, this is like if the Sgt. Pepper reprise had a dark, evil twin, but in a good way.
Yes. Yep, I can hear that.
What was also really cool is at some points the guitar sounded like a harmonica. And I don't know how they did it, but it was a really cool effect. Or was it just a harmonica?
It was Robert playing harmonica.
Oh, I thought they did something cool with the
okay.
guitar.
He used to, like in the early days, he used to play it.
So in case, I got a harmonica story really quick to go on a tangent. So when I went to go see Mike and Rob play at 133, there was a guy who was super, super drunk and attempting to dance, and he pulled out a harmonica, but he was so drunk, he was playing the wrong side of it, that you're not supposed to blow out your mouth, so he put it away, and we all thought he was done, but then he pulled out a tambourine and started hitting it, and Mike and Rob were looking at this guy like, what the hell? Anyway, so in case there's a listener who might not know, I had to Google this myself. A levee is an embankment that is built to prevent the overflow of a river, sometimes made of sediment or grass. If you Google it, you've definitely seen one before just walking along somewhere. And according to a YouTube commenter, this song is about a flood that forced blues musicians to relocate from the Delta where they lived to Chicago. But I think even if you didn't know the context of the song, it would still resonate. Not just because we still experience natural disasters on this planet, but because people experience moments of crises in their life where they're completely paralyzed and don't know what to do. But you can't remain paralyzed for too long or you'll get swallowed up. And even if you don't know the song that well, you've heard this guitar riff at least once in your life. And I enjoyed re-listening to it very much, especially with that little lick at the end.
This was written and performed in 1929 by Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe McCoy, and I don't think I sent you their version, and I forgot to check their version, so sorry, everyone. This song is about the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927. So, yeah, and they did have to relocate to Chicago. And son of a gun, you know what Led Zeppelin did with their reworked version?
What?
They gave Memphis Minnie a songwriting credit.
Hey, what?
Now, the thing was, she died in 1973, so I like to think she got to enjoy some of the royalties. At least I hope she did anyway. So anyway, when the levee breaks, you are screwed. You have to move on. You have to find a new home. And that's basically it. And it's just bluesy as all get out. You know, like we talked about Roberts on the harmonica, just wailing away on that, wailing away on his voice. The band is they're just killing it. And the thing is, John Bonham's 2-bar intro has been sampled on a ton of songs, because that sound is just so damn huge. And I sent you, the example I sent you was Damn I Wish I Was Your Lover by Sophie B. Hawkins. Did you get to listen to that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, but it's also been on some Beastie Boy tracks and just a lot of rap songs.
Well, that's fair. Led Zeppelin rips other people off, and other people rip them off. But maybe they credit them.
I think their management was also more proactive at getting their monies. So there you go. This is my favorite song on the album, just for the sound, just for the way it sounds. It's just awesome. Just a great way to close out the album. And it's kind of like they've left you like, the water's rising, you're out of luck. What are you going to do? Oh, the album's over.
Overall, I liked half of this album a lot. And I like Led Zeppelin's music best when their music puts me in a meditative state. So at first it was their English folk songs with Evermore, but then just the latter 3 songs of the album, Levee Breaks, California, and Four Sticks, which I know for a lot of their blues stuff they heavily borrowed from other singers of the day or from their idols. I still love it, just wish that the people they lifted from got more royalties. I think you can pick any Led Zeppelin album to be your first introduction, but I think for me, this wasn't a bad choice at all.
Yeah, so Led Zeppelin 4, or Zoso, or Untitled, or...
Oh, how ironic. It's Led Zeppelin 4 and I liked 4 songs.
There you go. Or the one with Stairway is just one of the greatest albums ever, even though my favorite is still Houses of the Holy. But I suppose if you were only to own one Led Zeppelin album, this is the one to get.
All right, as always, thank you for listening to the latest album. My dad listens to this. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz, because remember, the more you interact with the video, the greater chance we have of appearing on the YouTube homepage. If you follow me on social media, I post the episodes there. If you're friends with my dad, tell him what you want to listen to, and he'll send it to your inbox. As always, thank you for listening to the latest album. My dad listens to this. We'll be back next time with another album to nitpick and gripe about. Dad, anything you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, if there's a stairway to heaven and a stairwell to hell, do you think there's just like a people mover for purgatory since it's in the middle?